Hey guys, Work here. Welcome back to the bench. Now bear with me for a minute. We're going to do one last CZ video for a while. I know it's a long string of them, but I've been trying to get to this one for a while. So we all know that CZs are notoriously well-shooting guns. Smooth recoil impulse, flat shooting are all words that are commonly associated with CZ brand. And we all know that it's because of the low bore axis that they shoot so well. Right? Except no. So I compared 9 major firearms models, including Glock, Smith & Wesson, SIG, Beretta, to all find out what was up with this low bore axis myth. To be as fair as I could across the board, I tried to keep all the measurements similar across all the different types of guns. I measured from as close as I could get to the center line of the bore to the pivot point at the back of the firearm, which on most firearms is the bottom of the beaver tail. Obviously, this is easier and less subjective on some guns more than others. The SP01, for instance, has a pretty pronounced beaver tail, and you can see exactly how far up you can actually get your hand on this one. Other firearms, like the Glock 19s and 17s, have a less pronounced beaver tail, and it just kind of molds from the grip up into the slide, and it's much more difficult to get an accurate idea. So what I did on those was I took that hard line that they created and got as high as I could without getting into the slide, and measured that distance. Big shout out to 4 Guns in Lafayette for letting me use their inventory for samples. I don't have a whole lot of pistols, most of mine are CZs, with a couple Smith & Wessons and Rugers tossed in. So thanks to them, it's a great shop with great employees. They can get whatever you need, and they've got a great selection of firearms in stock. So as I got into measuring, I didn't go in any specific order. I just kind of picked up samples as I thought of them and started the process. After the mandatory safety check, mag check, and make the walls, testing the trigger, and everything else that you do when you get to hold a gun that you don't own, I'd mark the center line of the barrel with painter's tape, like this. Then the grip height with painter's tape, like this, and measured that distance with calipers, like this. Now obviously calipers are a little more precise than the estimation work that I was doing, but I feel like the results it gave were less subjective than a tape measure would be. It also allowed me to work in thousandths of an inch rather than fractions, which makes comparison a little bit easier to do. So this whole thing was done with the purpose of comparing it to CZs, which I pulled about halfway through my testing, and the results weren't surprising, to me at least. So let's go over the results a little bit. We'll start with the highest bore axis, and work our way down to the lowest. Some of the results may surprise you a little bit. So coming in number 9, at 1.275 inches, is the Beretta 92. Now the Beretta 92, although it doesn't always fit everybody's hands, is commonly thought as a very well-shooting pistol. It's accurate, it doesn't have a high recoil impulse, but with 1.275 bore axis height, it comes in at the top of our list at number 9 of the ones that I measured. Coming in at number 8, at 1.208 inches, is the 1911. Now a lot of people think the 1911 is one of the smoothest shooting pistols ever made. And again, this pistol falls in the top end of our bore axis heights. Coming in at number 7 at 1.195 inches is the SIG P320. Now the P320 is SIG's newest entry into the striker fire market, and you'll notice that this is the only polymer frame firearm in the top 5. Now coming in 6th at 1.128 inches is the SIG P226. Now I don't know about you, but when I think of a SIG pistol, I think of a really big slide, which obviously equates to a higher bore axis, right? And 1.128 inches, it's only about 16 thousandths of an inch taller than our number 5 spot. Now number 5 at 1.112 inches belongs to none other than the CZ75. That's right, the CZ75 and its low bore axis comes in at number 5 on our list. So what possibly could come below it, you might ask? It's gotta be things like the Ruger Mark series, right? No. Coming in at number 4 at 1.035 inches is the H&K VP9. Now the VP9, obviously again thought of as a very well shooting pistol, but this starts a trend on these top 4 places that you're gonna notice, and it's gonna stand out. Coming in at number 3 at 0.982 inches is the Springfield Xd Nine. Now again, the Springfield series, similar to the SIG series for me, look like they have extremely large slides, which again I equated before to having a high bore axis. But the Springfield is pointing out that that's not always the case. So it's looking more and more like the slide size does not equate to the bore axis height. Now coming in at number 2 on my list at 0.796 inches, slightly above 3/4 of an inch, is the Smith & Wesson M&P 9. So you notice as I went along these top 4, the H&K VP9, the Springfield Xd Nine, and the Smith & Wesson, that all 3 of these pistols are striker-fired, polymer-framed pistols. And that trend is going to continue with our number 1 spot at 0.704 inches in bore height comes the Glock 17 and 19. That's right, the Glock, the king of the striker-fireds, has the lowest bore axis of any of those 9 brands of pistols that I measured. So there's a couple of takeaways here. First, the CZ is in the center of the pack. Sure, it's not at the super high bore axis, but it's not the lowest either. quite a bit of a ways from it. The second is the separation in fire mechanism types. There's a pretty clear line between striker-fired firearms and hammer-fired firearms, except for that darn SIG P320. The movement of the firing spring from the frame up into the slide and the removal of the hammer allows the frame to be tightened up to the slide, reducing the bore axis height. Third, bore axis height does not necessarily correlate with smooth or soft shooting pistols. As you can see, there are many firearms with significantly lower bore axis heights than the CZ, but few would consider them as soft shooting as the CZ. So here's where the myth comes in. CZ, in all of their innovation, reliability, and legend as good guns, do not have low bore axes in today's market. They may have started out with relatively low bore axis heights compared to the other firearms in the market, but as time changed, so does technology, allowing for geometric changes in firearms and the realization that bore axis height was not what made CZ the shooter that it was. But CZ still remains at the tip of everyone's tongue who's shot one when asked, what's the softest recoiling 9mm you've shot? So why? Could some of it be perception? Of course. CZ has a reputation, and just like that music that everybody listened to back in high school that you convinced yourself that you would like to, opinions influence. But if that were the case, as it is with music, years later we'd look back and think, you know, that guy from The Offspring really can't sing worth a crap. We'd look back at CZ and have the realization that they're not what we thought they were, except they are. So if CZ really is the shooter that we think it is, then something has to be making a difference, right? But if it's not the bore axis, then what? Well, it's a few factors. One is the material of the guns. Many CZs are metal-framed guns, adding to the weight of the firearm. Now, we all know that with every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for every round that goes out of the end of the barrel, a similar force is pushing back on the firearm. Now, force is mass times acceleration. The force of the bullet is a small mass at a huge acceleration. The equal force pressing back on the firearm is offset by the comparatively huge mass of the firearm, reducing the acceleration. Now that acceleration is what gives you that muzzle flip and recoil. If you increase the mass to keep the equation equal, acceleration drops. So a 1-pound gun will have more felt recoil, or acceleration, than a 5-pound gun. So that's part of it. But then why do firearms with similar weight and close bore axes seem to have more harsh recoil? Here's where a new theory is. CZ firearms are well designed. Revolutionary, right? Okay, maybe not, but hear me out. So I stated how that force is transferred to the firearm, and how the weight of the firearm dissipates the acceleration needed to balance the force equation. But there's some other stuff happening too. As the chamber unlocks and the slide comes back, the slide stops, reverses direction, and moves back forward to strip another round and rechamber. The slide motion is a large part of the felt recoil and muzzle flip, as it all happens above the fulcrum point of the firearm. So my theory is a combine of design aspects from CZ pistols that help to coordinate this ballet of moving components to focus the force in a controllable point on the pistol. Those aspects are the slide and recoil mechanism. CZ slides are tiny compared to the other firearms. Even the P07 and the P09 slides are relatively small compared to other polymer pistols. After coming out of lock, in which case the firearm itself has already alleviated some of the force by its sheer weight, the slide motion starts. But as the CZ slide weighs less, it imparts less force above the pivot point as it reciprocates. I have a theory that CZs are so well tuned that instead of coming to a hard stop, bottoming out of the recoil system, and flipping the front of the gun, that the spring actually does its job, reversing the direction of the slide before it reaches a full lock, focusing the recoil lower, below the fulcrum point, pulling the pistol back down into the hand, reducing flip. Now, I don't have any way to test this. Maybe some of the bigger channels with contacts with people with high-speed cameras can test this theory out. But one thing's for certain, the shootability of a CZ firearm is far more than its low bore axis. So the next time you get into a conversation with somebody, they bring up their CZ and how sweet of a shooting pistol it is, and the words low bore axis come out of their mouth. Remember this, that the CZ low bore axis is a myth. That's all we have for now, guys. If you like this video, please like and subscribe below. And until next time, do your research, get informed, and get to work.